I would like to discuss a topic very briefly that I think is incredibly important to give a quick word to, and I'll try to be as concise and make as much sense as possible. So, we have recently got some news that's quite disturbing, at the same time conflicting, coming out of Ukraine, and it came out of a suburb in Kiev by the name of Bucha, I believe is the name of the suburb. And we got some very disturbing images with Ukrainian official Zelensky, probably most notably, as well as allies of Ukraine, people in the West, Joe Biden himself, calling the what they believe to be, and that's a word that you'll hear a lot when you read articles about this. It's believed, it's speculated, nothing confirmed so far about some sort of atrocity that has happened in this particular area. And like I said, nothing has been confirmed. And to basically sum up this event, I want to give you a quote. It was coined by a man by the name of Hiram Johnson. He was an American politician, and his quote goes the following: "The first casualty when war comes is truth." And that was said during World War I, and it holds true so much even today, and I believe that will continue to be so. But coming out of this news, this disturbing and conflicting news that we got, is renewed and ever more harsher calls from people around the world, elected officials, politicians, and regular citizens alike, to impose even more sanctions on Russia. Yes, when you thought we were done waging economic warfare against Russia and Putin, demonizing them, no matter what you may think about it, they want to ramp it up even more. And I want to discuss what this means and what this has the possibility of doing, because I think that that part is largely ignored. So Europe, specifically Germany in this case, has taken a lot of negative PR because of their refusal to embargo, to refuse to turn away from Russian oil and natural gas. Now we know they are a large recipient of Russian oil and natural gas. I'll just give you a quick couple of statistics. As a whole, Europe gets about 40% of its gas supplies from Russia. In Germany, the figure is 55%, the highest dependency of any European state. The EU gets 25% of its oil from Russia. And I recently made a video about this in Vladimir Putin's threats, very real threats, demanding that unfriendly countries, quote unquote, pay up for their oil and natural gas in rubles, and Russia essentially going on the offensive as they get berated with these sanctions from the West, led by, of course, the United States. And these renewed calls for these sanctions, it's mind-boggling to me, because I don't think this is being thought through, at the very least, in a correct way. Why is it that now, of all times, we are seemingly expecting for sanctions to do what sanctions have never done? And that is to fix the problem or correct what we deem as to be incorrect or unjust actions by foreign powers. Sanctions have never done that. Allow me to give you just a couple of examples to bolster my point here. We sanctioned China to the high heavens. Trump did. He was very famous for it. The sanction games around the Huawei or Huawei Corporation, or however you say it, the tariffs on all the Chinese exports. Did that change China's policies? Did that hurt China in any meaningful way, if at all? No. In fact, they got even higher exports than they did the previous year when he started, before he did the nonsense. The sanctions on the Russian economy before these most current sanctions. We did it after they went into Crimea. Did they leave Crimea? Did they change their ways? Did that prevent them from going into Ukraine? No, it didn't. Another case of sanctions not working. We have sanctions on Cuba. We've been sanctioning Cuba for quite some time now. Are we, is that like hurting them in any meaningful sense? Well, yes, it's hurting the Cuban people, but is it changing their government? Are they changing the ways in which we don't like they act, we being the United States? No, not at all. Venezuela, the same case. Sanctions on Venezuela. Has their quote unquote socialist dictator that we demonize here in the US been pushed out of power? No, no, it hasn't. And it hasn't happened anywhere. It hasn't. And that's just the harsh truth of it. Okay? You can't control the actions of foreign powers by simply imposing economic warfare. We're at the point in time where these things can be sidestepped, they can be evaded, the problems can be alleviated. And we're seeing examples of it right now with these sanctions seemingly meant to cripple the Russian economy. And it really isn't doing that at all. You know, it's supposed to be bringing the Russian economy to its knees. Well, the ruble that was apparently so devalued its value has been increased because Russia isn't alone in this fight. They have, just like we have, their allies, and they have a really big ally, one being the People's Republic of China. And also, this isn't Afghanistan that we're sanctioning. This isn't, some small country like Iran. No, this is Russia, a major player in the world economy. They have major exports like fertilizer, oil and natural gas, and a plethora of other things. So when we sanction Russia, we're gonna feel it at home and among many other places. But one of the examples I'll give you is the price of oil has been shooting up. Well, Russia is a large exporter of oil. Yeah. So guess what's happening? They are seeing increased profits. While they're getting sanctioned, while you're being told by Western media this is hurting them so dearly, their profits are going up because of their exportations of oil. This is from Market Watch. For all the sanctions hitting Russia, its oil sales are helping to bankroll the war in Ukraine. Crunching numbers recently, Bloomberg estimated that if Russia's biggest trade partners don't cut ties, the country stands to earn close to $321 billion from energy exports, a third higher than last year. So just understand this sanction charade for a second. We sanction Russia. You hear from Joe Biden, Western media, and Western politicians that, oh, this is hurting them. They're suffering so greatly. They're seeing record profits that they're using to pay for the war in Ukraine. Do you see the game that's being played here, this farce, these lies that you're being fed? I hope you do. And that brings me back to this wanting Germany and Europe in general to embargo Russian oil and natural gas. The leader of Deutsche Bank, the CEO of Deutsche Bank, came out and gave his opinion on this entire matter. And I want to give you what he had to say. He says, and I quote, "A clear recession in Germany would presumably be inevitable when asked about Germany embargoing Russian oil and natural gas. As I pointed out earlier, they depend on this stuff more than anybody else. And Europe in particular depends on Russia for a plethora of things. And German politicians, high-ranking officials in the EU have been singing an entirely different tune from their Western allies, specifically here in the United States. Joe Biden was talking recently, just callously throwing out terms like, oh, food shortages and, people in Europe are going to suffer, but that's a price I'm willing to pay. Pay for what exactly? You see, while all this bloviating and, jovial grandstanding is going on the media, behind the scenes, these people in Germany, these people in Europe in general are sweating and they're scratching their head and they're wondering, is this all worth it? Is grandstanding and virtue signaling to the people that we don't like Vladimir Putin worth chaos here at home? Is it worth a recession? Is it worth worsening inflation, long-term inflation, which is guaranteed if you do something like this? Is it worth thrusting German and European people into even more hardship than they already are in? And these are questions that they're genuinely asking themselves. They can't get away from their dependency on Russia so quickly. And they're being met with very fierce opposition. Here's a tweet that I read. Deutsche Bank is lecturing the world about going easy on Russia. They're not even hiding who they're in bed with anymore. Look, man, I'm not saying I have a whole lot of love for Deutsche Bank. But the fact of the matter is, these people are correct when they say that this will cripple the German economy and Europe in general if they take such a drastic action. And I want to end the video by saying this. If German officials, EU officials, take the road of embargoing Russian oil and natural gas and depriving their economies and therefore their people of the much needed means for their own survival, they will face a problem that is much more damning, much more fierce, and much more frightening than the current problem that they're faced with. You know, the European people are a bit different from us here Americans. When they're faced with economic hardship, they don't roll over and accept it and go along to get along. They head to the streets and they fight back. And I have news for you. The polls right now may show, depending on what you look at, that Germans or Europeans are in favor of embargoing Russian oil and natural gas to really stick it to Putin as if that's going to do something to Putin. It'll only hurt them. But I guarantee you, once that pain sets in, once this recession sets in, once chaos ensues, the European populace has the ability, if they take to the streets and protest, to grind the economies there to a halt more severely and more quickly than Vladimir Putin can ever hope to do. And that is a scenario that I believe is in the back of every European leader's mind and that they always worry about. In conclusion, we can point the finger all we want at who or who isn't to blame for these current set of events. But one thing is for sure is that European leaders are going to have to decide whether or not they want to keep on following their master, that being the US, and cause mass difficulty for their own people, because everybody knows the repercussions for that set of actions will be ever so more harsh than what they're currently dealing with.